Hello children, and welcome back to another edition of Professor Mr. Wizard. I of course am Professor Mr. Wizard, and this is my assistant Douglas Pork. Douglas. We have a special request from some children today to talk about bread making. A lot of us can't get to the grocery store right now, and if your house is anything like our house, Douglas Pork's been eating up all your bread. So we're going to make some bread today, and the number one ingredient that I want to talk to you children today about in bread making is yeast. Have you ever heard of yeast? How about you, Shepherd? Have you ever heard in the Bible when they talk about unleavened bread? Here in a couple weeks as we go through Exodus, we're going to talk about when the children of Israel left Egypt. They had to leave in a hurry, and so they had to make unleavened bread. So a leaven is yeast. Yeast is a leavener. It's what makes the bread rise. Okay, so the children of Israel didn't have time to wait for the bread to rise, so they didn't put yeast into their bread. But what is yeast? And so Douglas Pork, Assistant Pork's going to tell us what yeast is. I told you to look up what yeast is. What the heck is yeast anyway? Okay, children, this is 5th grade bonus stuff right here. Every good scientist knows that yeast is a one-celled organism, okay? This is instant yeast or bread maker yeast right here. Get in here, cameraman. Look at that. Now, it looks dry and it looks regular, but it is actually a living organism, okay? And so when we add the yeast to flour, this is a little flour right here. When we add the yeast to flour and with water, the yeast starts to react with the sugar inside of the flour. And so let's call this reaction working out, okay? So if Douglas Pork and I were to work out and get going exercising, what happens when you get going exercising? Does anybody know this? Anybody? Thomas, do you know this? When you exercise a lot, you start to breathe. And you'll breathe real heavy. And that's what the yeast is doing with the sugar. And that's what causes the air into the bread. So we've got some bread dough right here that we've made. And this dough right here has been going for about an hour. And as this dough rises, it will get to be bigger and bigger because of what the yeast and the sugar is doing inside. After about an hour, that yeast will be risen to a full-size dough, and we can put it in the oven, and it'll come out to be something like this. This is a fresh loaf of bread that Professor Mr. Wizard just took out of the oven. It's nice and hot. Now, Assistant Douglas Pork, did you help me make this bread? Well, we know who's going to help me eat the bread, right? Not him. This has been another episode of Professor Mr. Wizard. We're glad you guys have joined us. We hope you guys are having fun. If you guys want to know more about bread making, please let me know. If you would like to ask Douglas Pork a question, have your mommy or daddy type it in the questions in the bottom. And if you would like to have a science experiment with Professor Mr. Wizard, please let me know. Thank you guys. We'll see you again.